Continuing not only my Black History Month binge, but my Sidney Poitier deep dive, I decided to watch The Last Brickmaker in America under the recommendation of the homies who have seen a lot more Sidney Poitier films than I have, and I wanted to watch a black film that I have never seen before. The Last Brickmaker in America, I'd say, is really good for a made-for-TV film. Sidney Poitier carries this film as an old brickmaker who literally built the small town he lives in brick by brick, and they want to put his old ways of brickmaking out. After tragedy, he befriends this teenage boy and then his family, and in the process he changes their lives as well as give him a new outlook on life. How I really enjoyed this film is by watching him Stockholm a family into brickmaking. Of course, there's some life lessons to be learned here or there, but of course it's just funny to think about. Shout out to the homies because this was a really good film that I recommend people watch. It's on Tubi. It may be a simple movie, but Sidney Poitier alone is worth watching him act in this simple but good film, and I'm gonna give The Last Brickmaker in America the hard eyes emoji. So last week I watched The Fallout, and for a movie that went straight to HBO Max, this was a pretty solid short film about a couple of teenagers brought together by a traumatic life experience and dealing with the fallout of that traumatic experience and how it affects them mentally, to which I say they handle in an intelligent and respectful way that anybody who has been through this type of experience can relate, which is definitely needed in this day and age after the past couple of years of all the school shootings. Jenna Ortega gives a mature performance, as well as Maddie Ziegler, who I know of but don't really follow. As far as what I've seen from her, this is a more mature performance from her. This may not be an easy watch for some, but from an acting and filmmaking standpoint, this was a well-made film that I do recommend. I'm gonna give The Fallout the hard eyes emoji. Every Black History Month, I try to watch some black films I've never seen before, and I decided to kick things off with Harlem Nights, which I've never seen before, and everybody kept telling me I gotta see it. And after seeing it, I gotta say, it wasn't as funny as I thought it was gonna be, but it still has its merits, like this stacked cast, from its two legendary leads, Eddie Murphy and the late Richard Pryor, the late Red Fox, Danny Aiello, Jasmine Guy, Arsenio Hall, the late Charlotte Murphy, and of course, the late Della Reese, who in my opinion, had the best scene where she whoops Eddie Murphy's ass, which had me busting the fuck out laughing. The interactions between the characters, especially the comedic actors, are what holds this movie together. But to me, this movie falls short is because of Eddie Murphy as a director, in which this was his first and only outing as a director. I like it when actors go outside their comfort zone, but I think this movie would have been better received both critically and financially if someone else had directed, given the hell this production went through. But that being said, I still recommend this film, and I'm gonna give Harlem Nights the thumbs up emoji. My next Black History Month pick is a Disney Channel original movie that I have not seen in years, The Color of Friendship. I remember watching this on Disney Channel, particularly around Black History Month, and back then I thought it was good and fascinating that Disney was willing to pull out content like this on their channel for kids, which was much needed at the time, and revisiting with adult eyes, I will say this is the Disney Channel's more mature films, because not only it deals with racism, it deals with cultural barriers, classism, the crisis in South Africa at the time, and yet it manages to tell a fish out of water story where the fish out of water character has a complete arc at the end. Now granted, it still has some clunky dialogue, and given that this is still Disney Channel, it doesn't quite go the distance, and the pacing fast tracks the narrative, but for what it was going for within the confines of the Disney Channel, I will give The Color of Friendship the hard eyes emoji. The Book of Boba Fett just wrapped, and if I could sum up how I feel about the show, it's scatterbrained. The first 4 episodes were Boba-centric, and the flashbacks I thought were the best part of the episodes, because we got to see how he got out of the Sarlacc pit, and it fills in the gaps between that and when we see him in The Mandalorian. But the present-day stuff was fun at times, but not as interesting as the flashbacks. Speaking of The Mandalorian, the episodes featuring Mando turned into The Mandalorian Season 2.5. It was also better than all the Boba Fett stuff, but at least we got to see where Mando and Grogu are in their journey. Bryce Dallas Howard had the best directed episode, and Robert Rodriguez did right with all the action in my opinion. In the end, The Mandalorian is the best Star Wars show, and when it's all said and done, I felt like they contradicted the character from where he was in the original stuff. Despite my gripes with the show, it still had elements that I did enjoy. I just wish for a show about Boba Fett, as popular character he is, I thought they would have put some more respect on his name, not him be the one giving respect.
I intend to rule with respect.
Still, I will be nice and give The Book of Boba Fett the thumbs up emoji. Peacemaker just wrapped, and this show was brilliant in so many ways. This show proves why James Gunn is one of the best working filmmakers today, because not only he has made superhero content for 2 different comic book companies, but he leaves his mark on both, and he does so by making you sympathize with broken characters, and he does so by making Peacemaker a broken character to make you sympathize with him. This is without a doubt John Cena's best performance. The action is sick. It's a DC show that takes place in the DCEU but doesn't rely on the DCEU. It still manages to be its own thing. And we get some amazing side characters played by great actors such as Danielle Brooks, Jennifer Holland, Freddie Stroma, Robert Patrick, Steve Agee among the standouts. I can't wait to see season 2 whenever that comes out because I enjoyed this show. It manages to take my least favorite character from the Suicide Squad and turn him into a compelling character. I'm gonna give Peacemaker season 1 the hands up emoji because it is a masterpiece. Surprise! Happy Valentine's Day! Yes, over the weekend, before I watched the big game, I finally watched Denzel Washington's 4th directorial outing with A Journal for Jordan, which is about a couple and their relationship from the time they meet to them spending time apart due to him serving in the military. They both have a baby together, and he dies serving in the military, but he leaves his son a journal with advice and life lessons that he can learn from. Now, the two leads, Michael B. Jordan and Shantae Adams, were great in the roles, Shantae Adams being the standout. In fact, the trailers say introducing Shantae Adams like this is her first film, but it's not. A lot of people remember that she played obscure but legendary rapper Roxanne Shante in the Netflix film Roxanne. It's always great to see Denzel Washington directing a film, but out of the 4 films he's made, this is probably my least favorite, but that doesn't mean I think it's bad. I think he did it in the best way possible, showed how a relationship functions when one of them is serving in the military, and it does have an ending that tugs at the heartstrings. I'm gonna give A Journal for Jordan the thumbs up emoji. Queens just wrapped its first season and I quite enjoyed the show. Now, this show at times was silly, and the fact that it is on ABC makes the show have some relatively sanitized moments that had it been on HBO, Stars, on Netflix, I'm sure the show would have gone the distance a little more with the realism. But I get it, ABC wanted to make their own empire. All that said, I enjoyed this show because it was pretty much exploring midlife crisis through the lens of 4 40-year-old women that were part of a female rap group from the 90s. Eve, Brandy, and Naturi Nantu was the standouts given that they have musical backgrounds, but Nadine Valaquez I was curious about because she does not have a musical background, but she made her mark both as an actress and a musician. Pepe Sonoga was another standout, and I particularly loved her arc throughout the show. The last negative I have is that the second half of the show kind of changed due to Eve going on maternity leave. Whether she will come back is up in the air, and whether this show will get a season 2 is up in the air, but if it didn't, I'd say this was a good end here, and seeing how this show ended, I don't know where they're going to go from here, but for right now, I give Queens the thumbs up emoji. It's been 20 years since this underrated gem of a film came out. Chronicle really does get better and better with time. Not only this is one of, if not the best found footage films, in my opinion, it's a good superhero or supervillain origin story about these 3 boys that gets these powers and how each of them react and go about getting these powers and how it affects their personal lives. Dane DeHaan is of course the standout. He plays a kid that doesn't have the best home life, and once he gets these powers, he is slowly driven to madness. While the other kid, played by Steve Montgomery, is a more popular and selfish one that turns out to be more level-headed and a good person. I remember this film being the jumping point for the state of Michael B. Jordan's career right now, and he was already a working actor. Josh Trank directed the hell out of this film, and it's a shame his involvement in Fant Forsyth derailed his career. Max Landis wrote the hell out of this film, but it's a shame he derailed his own career because of his controversies. But I always separate the art from the artist, and everybody contributed to this film, both in front of and behind, is amazing. I give Chronicle the hands up emoji, cause it's a masterpiece. The Girl Before was released on HBO Max over the weekend, and I watched it not because of the cast, but the story itself was a bit intriguing. It's about an architect who designs a super smart house and moves in women that remind him of his deceased wife. Both women taking place in 2 different time periods. The latter girl finds out about the titular girl before her was murdered in that house, and she begins to unravel secrets about that girl and the architect behind the house. Again, I watched this for the cast, in which the 3 leads are Gugu Mbatha-Raw, David Oyelowo, Jessica Plummer. The first 2 are great actors, so I expected them to show up, and showed up they did. Jessica Plummer is the first time I'm seeing her, and she did great as well. The mystery itself was fun to follow, and I was just sitting there waiting to see how it all plays out. It does end in a satisfying way, but it did take a lot of filler, which wore down the pacing a little bit. I felt if they had made a 3-episode miniseries instead of 4, it would have worked better, but I'm still glad I watched it, and I'm gonna give The Girl Before the thumbs up emoji. John Q is celebrating 20 years, and I revisited it for a number of reasons. Because 1, it's Denzel Washington. You can never go wrong with Denzel, and they didn't in this film. 2, I would catch this film on TV back in the day, but I've only seen it in sections, so this was my first time watching in its entirety. 3, I love the concept, which is a father's child needs a heart transplant but can't afford it, so he takes matters into his own hands to make sure that his son gets the treatment he needs, and Denzel conveys that so good. He carries this film, of course, but I didn't realize how stacked this cast is, from Robert Duvall, Ray Liotta, Kimberly Elise, James Woods, Homeboy from Entourage, a Remember the Titans reunion, Eddie Griffin. An alternate title I will give this film is Denzel vs. Healthcare, because this film was also a reflection of the healthcare system at the time and the lengths people will go to get the treatment he, she, or somebody else needs, and to me, that made for an entertaining film. I'm gonna give John Q the hard eyes emoji. Well, I knew Tyler Perry putting the Madea character down after the Madea family funeral wasn't going to last long. Madea makes her grand return with Madea Homecoming, which was released on Netflix. Now, I have my issues with Tyler Perry, but I am a fan of his success, and he does occasionally make something that is at the very least enjoyable. I lean more towards his stuff that doesn't feature Madea, even though once in a while he cranks out something as bad as A Fall from Grace. But in the case of Madea, I'd say he hasn't made a good Madea movie since Big Happy Family, and I'd say this is not his worst, but still not his best, but was still a fun watch. We get fan-favorite characters like Uncle Joe, also played by Perry, and at times funnier than Madea. Cassie Davis, Tamela, and David Mann return as Aunt Bam, Cora, and Mr. Brown. The Agnes Brown character, played by Brandon O'Carroll, is clearly Mrs. Doubtfire. Now, I know this is a popular character in the UK, and I think even predates Madea, but come on, this character is influenced by Mrs. Doubtfire. Regardless, this character was a great addition to the Perryverse. Though a fun watch, the Perry-isms are still in this film, and if you've seen enough Tyler Perry films, you know what I'm talking about. I give Madea Homecoming the shoulder shrug emoji. Monsters Ball is celebrating 20 years, and I remember watching this film on HBO back when I was a kid. In fact, it's probably one of the few R-rated films that got me into watching more mature films. Plus, there's a certain scene in this film that is the inception of my puberty. Y'all know what scene I'm talking about. But I also remember this being Halle Berry's best performance. Watching with real adult eyes, I forgot about how sad, heavy, and dramatic this film is. Halle Berry, of course, won an Oscar for this, and well deserved. Billy Bob Thornton is one of my favorite old man actors, especially since he is in one of my favorite Christmas films of all time. And some other standout performances by Diddy, Peter Boyle, R.I.P., and Heath Ledger, rest in peace. This was a couple years before he did Brokeback Mountain and The Dark Knight, and I think studios and filmmakers saw him in this and said, yo, he can really handle dramatic acting. The performances definitely carry this film, but it's not an easy watch, but when you do watch, you won't feel like you wasted your time. I'm gonna give Monsters Ball the hard eyes emoji. Continuing my Harry Potter marathon with The Order of the Phoenix, which was, for a long time, my second to least favorite in the series. But that's because at the time when this film came out, I was in the mindset of, oh, this series is still going? Good for them. Plus, I felt this series at the time was becoming a little episodic. But as I've gotten older and rewatching in the context of the series being complete, I've grown to appreciate this entry, and rewatching now, I've grown to appreciate it even more, so that when I do finish revisiting this series, I might have to shuffle around my ranking of this series. Everything Harry has been through in his life starts to take a toll on him in this film, and it will take his friends and loved ones to keep him sane. The universe expands even more. We see one of my favorite wizard duels. We meet one of the biggest bitches in cinema and literature. I'm gonna give Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix the hard eyes emoji. Continuing my Harry Potter marathon with the Half-Blood Prince, the general consensus of this entry is it's the least favored among Potterheads, mostly because it's the one that deviates from the books the most, and they're not wrong for that. For me personally, as I said before, I stopped reading past The Prisoner of Azkaban, so I can't say, but for what I got, I remember seeing this and thought it was a bit slow and calm at times, but once I saw it in context of the last two films, I appreciate that it's the calm before the storm. It gives these kids a chance to be kids one last time before shit hits the fan. Of course, Dumbledore dying was the thing I remember most about this film, and maybe it's the first time in the series I felt things are about to get real dangerous. Watching with adult eyes, this is the best for the Draco Malfoy character, given his task and how he feels about it. We see that he is a victim of his own circumstances, which humanizes him. This film is not perfect. We still have the teenage BS that we gotta sit through at times, but when it's getting serious, and it is thrilling, and I suggest you give this film another rewatch because it is underrated in my opinion. I give Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince the thumbs up emoji.